It starts off with a comment by Neil Sterling, 8151. In all seriousness, your content is a fresh breath of air compared to most other YouTube channels. Thank you, Neil. Neil goes on to talk about how training with high intensity, high volumes and high frequencies as a natural lifter creates a lot of fatigue and ends up having to take time off. Applying this high intensity, high volume, high frequency approach to smaller muscle groups like biceps and triceps, overall fatigue is much lower, and you're going to get some spillover gains potentially into the rest of your upper body. And it's a great point. A lot of my recommendations for arm training, in terms of specifically frequency and volume, I wouldn't duplicate for leg training, for example, because the muscles are so much bigger and fatigue on your system, your body as a whole, is a real thing. So it's a great point by Neil, but let's get into the debate back and forth. Mr. Oscar 5690 decides to stop by. Nah, this guy's a joke, doing reps way too fast. Follow Dr. Mike and Jeff Nippard. Thank me after. In this video, there is some training footage where I'm doing fast, explosive reps. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that I'm an advocate of using fast, explosive reps at certain times. I'll put the link to the video in the description if you want to watch and see kind of what this guy's responding to. And it's understandable. It looks a little wacky. It's unconventional. It's not what some of these kind of science-based lifters preach or instruct you to do. Neil Sterling fires back. Neil's in the game. At Mr. Oscar 5690, Dr. Mike and Nippard have also good advice, but they assume everyone wants to have that modern-day bodybuilder look. After more than 30 years of lifting, I want to focus on the things in my workouts that are important to me. Also, people who change their opinion on the very thing they are doing for years because of every new study, instead of relying on their own experiences, are a mild joke to me. See, things are heating up a little bit, or we've got a disagreement here. People aren't seeing eye to eye. Mr. Oscar chimes back in. I don't know if that's exclusively true. I see a lot of talk of form and basics. If you have an issue with bodybuilding, I don't understand why you're at a video growing arms. Okay, Mr. Oscar double comments. Says again, also there's changing your opinion and there's adapting to new information. Yeah, Dr. Mike's arms speak for themselves. I think they're making the right calls. So, this guy is going to bat for Dr. Mike, which is okay. That's fine. Neil jumps back in. I have no problem with bodybuilding. I do it for 30 years. My point was that not everyone wants to compete and not everyone thinks that modern-day bodybuilder physiques are a desirable goal, which is a good point, Everybody has their own goals, what you want your body to look like, and that's up to you. My other point was that I'd rather have advice from someone with experience than someone who solely relies on studies. It should be obvious that I don't talk about Dr. Mike, who is extremely competent. So he's given Dr. Mike a little bit of love. I simply don't like the clickbaity style most bodybuilder YouTubers do nowadays, and that every new study is considered the holy grail of muscle growth. All right, Neil. Mr. Oscar chimes back in. Yeah, a lot of bad YouTubers sharing a lot of bad info. ... I see the speed this guy is doing reps. No holds, no stretch. I'm running. Doesn't like the fast reps. Final comment here. Neil Sterling jumps back in. If it works for him, why not? ? At least he found a way that works for him. To me, that's 100 times better than some YouTuber quoting a study from someone else who had done tests on some random people who have been training for a few months or not. If you haven't, so that concludes the back and forth, which I think is a constructive, opposition of views. People are being respectful, and it's good. And it highlights what's going on here. And before I get into exactly what I think you should take from this and what my insight is, you should watch this video, which will be linked in the description, on tempo. Specifically around this, I've put out some other content with fast tempo. People were freaking out, and I illuminate how I did a deep dive into all of the scientific literature, or a good chunk of it, not all of it at all, a portion of it, around tempo as it pertains to training for muscle, and showed my findings. And I'm not going to go into full detail of what that is, but it illuminated that there isn't 100% conclusive scientific evidence that you should only ever be doing a slow tempo with a stretch. If anything, it points to this fast tempo as being effective for other things. So go watch that video if you're interested. Particularly, the takeaway point from this that I want you to see is that Mr. Oscar, you're going to miss, if you have a perspective that Mr. Oscar has that, you know, I'm listening to Dr. Mike and Jeff Nippert and science, and I'm only going to do a slow tempo with a stretch. And anybody, in this case me, who's doing a fast explosive tempo, I'm going to dismiss that as ineffective and it's not going to work. And what I want to show you here is that if you get too fixated on what the latest scientific consensus is, you're going to limit your ability to take on certain approaches that could also be effective. And part of the issue that I have with the kind of science community around training for muscle is that we're trying too hard to find the right specific answer. And I strongly believe that it's a little bit more nuanced and there isn't one fixed best answer. For example, tempo. I do slow tempo, I do fast tempo, I do medium tempo, as you can see in this training footage. Mr. Oscar, if you took the time, you would see that I like to use fast tempos because I've seen them to be beneficial for certain things. One, progressive overload. Being able to progress the weight that I use for any given lift increases much faster if I add a little bit of burst to my tempo instead of doing a super slow controlled. I found that led me to more of a plateau where I couldn't add more reps and weight over time. Also, in directly this training footage, the faster reps with explosive tempo leads to the most insane pump. If you add partials in and do drop sets, like the craziest pump of all time. And I know that pump is not directly correlated with muscle growth, but it is something. And at the very least, it's worth experiencing. So for those two reasons, I've seen fast tempos be very effective, but I also use slow tempos because I think slow tempo for me has been more effective for accentuating the stretch, which seems to be beneficial. Nothing wrong with that. Also, developing mind-muscle connection. If you're going so fast, you're not really feeling the muscle. You're just kind of blasting the weight around. You're moving the weight rather than moving the muscle. So to develop that connection with the muscle, to learn to activate it at a higher degree, develop this skill of mind-muscle connection, a slow tempo is extremely useful. Lastly, I think a variety of training parameters is something you should always have in your program. And this kind of desire to be tribal and join one side of the argument and oppose the other is ultimately going to limit your ability to continue to progress. And if you want to prioritize results, you need to resist this urge and tendency that we all have to join a side and feel like you're right and maybe strike down other things that are wrong. Nobody really wants to go and put a lot of energy into something and be unsure and be kind of neutral whether or not they're doing the right thing. Well, I'm telling you that if you can apply that approach to your training and not marry yourself to any one ideology, whether it be science-based lifting, whether it be experience-based lifting, and just learn to look at anything that gets suggested, whether it's a study or whether it's some random person or anything, and try to assess if there's value in that you could take out to apply to yourself to further achieve results. And you limit that process when you pledge yourself to any one ideology, even if it's science. And I know nobody wants to oppose science and it's supposed to be like a law, but I'm telling you in this case, it's not bad and it's useful. And I look at studies and I read them and I just go, what can I take from this? What does it seem like is going on here? What's the nuance of this study? What are all the variables they're limiting? What does this result really show? Look under the hood to see the details of it. There's always more gray area and nuance than gets presented when people bring the studies up and talk about how you're going to apply them to your training. Often it's cast in a way that makes it simpler and more rock solid than it actually is. If you look under the hood of the details of all the study, you go, this is an interesting result, but I'm not going to change my whole training approach based on this. And I would say in this case, you're probably going to limit yourself. The buzz and the hubbub right now from Nippert and Dr. Mike is a slow tempo with a stretch. And so your takeaway point is that I think you're limiting yourself if you're striking down all other approaches. And this is just tempo if it comes to rep range, if it comes to frequency, if it comes to exercise selection, if it comes to training intensity, if it comes to intensity technique, should I do partial, should I not? All these things, the more of an open mind you can have, the better you're going to be for it. That's what I've seen. And it doesn't mean you have to just be an experience-based lifter. Like some people are hardcore on that and they hate science. I'm like, science is useful, man. What are you talking about? But it has its limitations. And experience-based lifting is useful, but it also has its limitations. And it's just a difficult kind of place to land in. And so what I'm trying to show you and encourage you to do is to be able to be in the middle ground and divorce yourself and just take a deep breath and go, I'm okay without being attached to one ideology or the other, because that's what's going to limit your progress. If you get attached to it, even if it's really good, even if it's optimal, you're going to want to continue to evolve your approach if you want to continue to see results. And if you're constrained to one way of thinking, even if it's within science, and you can't consider some of this other information that's coming from other sources, let's say in this case from experience-based lifting, you're going to limit yourself. I truly believe that. So that's what this back and forth shows. Both individuals are respectful. There's nothing wrong with it. Generally, I agree more with Neil Sterling than I do Mr. Oscar, but that's okay. And at the end of the day, we're not all going to agree ever, so that's fine. But I hope that this shows you that there isn't one fixed best answer all the time. And resisting the desire to find that because it feels comfortable and it feels better is going to only benefit you in your muscle growing journey. That's what I've seen myself. So hope that helps. If you want to do any of my specific arm workouts, you can sign up for my site. The link is below, where, lately I've been documenting all of the routines that I do. The footage you're seeing here, I condense it down into like specifically what I did in that routine. So if you want to do all my workouts, you can check that out. And I think that lately I've been experimenting a lot with a lot of new structures and different types of ways of programming your training, because I think variety and experimentation is critical. And over time I draw inferences. After I've done something for a long period of time, I'll draw an inference to make a recommendation based on my own experience. But if you want to follow those programs and see what I'm doing, go ahead and check that out. And if you have any questions or anything, leave a comment. I'll check it out. And if I can answer and offer something to help you make more gains, I will. Thanks for watching. As always, have a great day. Peace.